Hey folks, it's Pastor Taylor here from Promises Church. We're doing EROS again. We're super excited about it. This is our second episode. This particular episode is dedicated to healthy communication, green flags, and negotiables and non-negotiables.
I gotta get my corny dad line ready. Ones and twos, never the blues. Come on. No? I'm gonna do it. I'm definitely doing it. Don't do it. I'm netta. Netta. You better know I'm doing that. That's so good, daddy. Netta. Oh, get Chevis. Chevis. Dang it, Chevis. All right, I got it. Let's introduce our guest. We have our very own resident light worker, Tony Purnell, the media duo, Candy and Kev, Pastor Andrew and Lady Chivis Granum, and our Christian sex education specialist, Arnetta Shaw, and our very own single and ready to mingle, Kay Sid. And I am your host, Chelsea B. Welcome. Now, I would love to pose this question to the rest of the panel. What do you guys think? How do you feel about negotiables, non-negotiables, and kind of setting that boundary early on?
So I love this question. Well, I definitely went into my relationship with my own set of boundaries, my non-negotiables, my negotiables. Again, I was 21, he was 19. I'm 50. We ain't know nothing, okay? I'm 50 now. Now I say, we didn't know a thing.
My metamorphosis as a full-grown woman was boundaries. That the imagery is a wall. And you can set these clear, definitive boundaries about what you're not going to put up with when you're dating. However, when you become married, the walls need to come down if you're going to have a healthy relationship. And what age and time have taught me is some of my very clear and distinct non-negotiables, I had to eat humble pie because they were not conducive to a healthy relationship. I mean, it was fine when I was just dating to be dating, but in marriage, when I think about boundaries, the first imagery I thought about psychotherapist Tony was a wall. And my husband, and because I was living on my own, had my own my husband, he laughs every time I say this, my own 2-bedroom apartment with a working fireplace when I was 18.
Yes!
Fireplace. But it made him that much, it was that much more of, I'm going to pass the mic to him so he can speak from his perspective, but I remember him telling me, babe, you need to let me in. You don't have to be that independent person figuring it out. I don't know where I fit in because you're not giving me space because you're doing it all. So I think, Chelsea, there's two different conversations. There's the single conversation of setting boundaries, and I absolutely believe that you should, because as a dating person, you don't have to take anything from anyone. But when you have said that I do the good, the bad, and the ugly, you're non-negotiable. I mean, there are some things for me that are non-negotiables. non-negotiables, and that's the 5 forms of domestic violence.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a successful marriage, we got to reconsider those boundaries, as your word, or the non-negotiables, negotiables.
I'll make it really quick. So we have, I think, 4 psychologists up here, which is going to, is that correct? Which is going to balance out my ignorance. So from my perspective, it gets to a point where it's your non-negotiables become, you know what, I'm going to pick my battles. And after a while, you begin to say, okay, is this worth me fighting over? Is this worth me? Is this something that I can compromise on? Is this something I can give in with? As she said, we've been married for close to 30 years, or is it 30 years? Because I can't keep up. But we've been married close to 30 years. So after a while, it's certain things that you have to look at and say, you know what? That was a non-negotiable, but I want to go to sleep. And I don't feel like arguing this point. So that is now negotiable. Yes, if you want to go ahead and buy something off of Amazon tonight, go ahead and do it. I'm going to sleep. Whereas we might have had a budget. So certain things you begin to compromise on as time goes on. Now, I believe that when you're dating, that your non-negotiables should be in a place where you're willing to say, okay, I'm willing to negotiate if you're worth that.
You know what? Can I chime in on that real quick? That was good. That was so good.
That was good.
Chelsea, I
Talk to
also
me.
want to make it clear that I said boundaries because when we say non-negotiables, society looks at it as a negative thing, right? And so that's why I said, let me change that thing to boundaries. Boundaries is for me and me alone. And so only thing I really have control over is myself and my reactions to a situation. I literally have no control over what you do.
Come on.
But what you do, I'm going to do this. Oh, you did this? My boundaries now are in place because of what you did. I can't control what you did. But because of what you did, now I'm going to put my boundaries in motion. Boundaries are for me and me alone. You have something to say in that?
I do.
Go ahead.
Hi,
Come on, Netta.
guys.
Talk to us.
My thing is, I like the boundaries. And before you can even create the boundaries, you need to be self-aware and you need to have emotional intelligence, i.e., please start at therapy because everybody needs to go. Basically, come to the understanding of what are my underlying emotions in the first place? Like, somebody could be saying something to you, you ain't like their attitude and they really didn't mean nothing by it, but on the inside, you're like, oh, this is what their intention was and this, that, and the third. But if you're not aware of, one, who you are, and then 2, the things that are actually triggering you, having that emotional intelligence to identify, because like now that I'm older and I've been in therapy for like 5 years, I can say, hey, I feel abandoned here. You hurt my little feelings, my friend. Let's try to run this back. So it's really important to have that understanding and recognize that it's not always about you. You are not the center of this show, and you actually come to actually want to make an understanding with the person that you're talking to,
Indeed.
whoever the relationship is with. But
Indeed.
And I like that. I like to add this, and I agree with everything that you all said, right? One of my prerequisites, when I do weddings and I do premarital counseling, one of the prerequisites is you must both go to individual counseling.
That's it.
Because the fact of the matter is that we as individuals, we are going to change, right? And we're not the same people who we are when we step into the relationship. We're going to transform and change into somebody. So I think that as we approach therapy, you can start to get an inkling of who you really are. Because also, you don't know who you really are until you step into that relationship and that marriage and somebody's watching you 24/7 and showing you things about yourself that you've never seen before.
Yikes.
So the areas where you've never seen how you act like your mother or you act like your father and you don't want to believe it and your partner's saying, no, this is what I see.
Yes.
You start to get an understanding of that. And so when it comes to, you know, I like the word boundaries because it's all about, like you said, Tony, it's all about me. I'm the one who sets the boundaries for myself, right? And the non-negotiables and negotiables, it's applicable because the Bible says 2 can't walk together unless they're agreed,
Come
right?
on.
And so if we're actually going to be in agreement and go somewhere, if I set boundaries for myself and I'm in agreement with my partner and we're moving in the same direction, then that person's not going to veer into an area or to a place where our boundaries, the boundaries that I set for myself, aren't there, right? So I'm not only just setting them for myself, but I'm also setting an example.
Yes.
and it keeps me out of trouble, and hopefully, or it keeps her out of trouble, and hopefully, the way that she sets the example is going to keep me out of trouble as well.
And I don't know, this has turned into a boundary conversation today because it's so good. But I think it's important. Emotional intelligence is key. It's important to have your own boundaries to keep yourself regulated and in check. But I think also again, time and mistakes over 30 years. If y'all don't think we made some mistakes, you're sadly mistaken. You must not watch our show. But I think it's also important, and Pastor, you made me think of this when you were just speaking. It's good for wife to have her code of ethics, her boundaries. It's good for a husband to have his code of ethics, his boundaries. But I think sometimes couples miss an important part. Coming together to set the norms, the boundaries for the relationship.
That's the negotiation.
Moving out of egocentrism. Egocentrism talks about seeing things only from my perspective. So, and everything, and I had to learn this. Listen, y'all, I kind of, for a couple of years, was still operating in, if I want to do this, I'm going to do this. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
That's it.
Never really considering how it was going to affect my husband, and then ultimately my children, and even now my grandchildren. So I had to step out of egocentrism, and in every action. So when you were speaking, Pastor, it made me think, every action that we individually makes affects the unit. So therefore, when we come together, knowing what my personal boundaries are, he knowing what his personal boundaries are. Now, come on, let's reason. Bible talks about, come on, let's reason together, right?
Let's
talk.
negotiate.
Yeah, and so let's come together and let's set some rules of engagement for this marriage, not based on our family trauma and what we learn, negative and positive, from our families of origin, but let's set our own norms for our little family.
If I could interject briefly, negotiate, that word brings me to another word, cooperation, right? When I think of the word negotiate, I often think about you're giving up something. You have to break away from something. When I think about the word cooperation, it's a willingness, right? I'm willingly going into this to say that I would like to cooperate with you. Therefore, if I want to cooperate with you, I don't have a problem and I don't have an issue letting this part of me go. Meaning that if we're talking about negotiables, that is what I'm actually negotiating with. I'm cooperating with you, and that is my negotiable, right? So I think that is another way to, or a different perspective to also look at it. Netta?
I think laying a foundation, like you got to have the right foundation, because everybody has their own set of boundaries, but what's the foundation in this conversation? I'm not going to sit here and, you're not supposed to be unequally yoked. So if I have these goals and I have these dreams and I was raised this way and I come from this Christian background, I'm not necessarily going to be able to work well with somebody who has a completely turbulent lifestyle.
You took me
and
to
they
another
don't necessarily have things kind of like laid out as to where they're going. They just all over the place.
Yes.
I usually kind of tell people, I would say, well, do you know who you are? Because if you don't know who you are, we can't necessarily go anywhere past that, because I know who I am.
Yes.
I know where I'm going. I know what my plan is. And I can't really build anything with you if you can't even tell me who you are. What's the foundation of this entire relationship in the first place? Let's not waste time.
That's really good. So this actually brings me to another question, if I can. Do you think that it's important for your partner to be a Christian? I think we talked a little bit about this in our last show, but in terms of negotiables and non-negotiables, is that person being a Christian a negotiable? Not that face, not you raising that brow like that. Okay. No, Netta, go ahead.
It's not a negotiable for me.
Yes.
They not only just Christian, because I grew up in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could grow up in the church and just be the furthest away from Jesus that you could possibly be.
Come
right?
on.
So I need to know, is this real? Are you really sold out for Jesus? But not only that though, are you a real person? I don't want one of them extra holy, these are lies. I need to know that you're really in it and you're really dedicated and you're really faithful. That does matter to me. You do have to be a Christian, but I need you to be a real one.
Got you.
And
Anybody
I'm
else?
glad she said that. I grew up in church, lineage of bishops, and my family background. My father was a pastor, and all I knew was church all my life.
Yeah.
In that, I knew how to play church
Come on.
in order to attract what I wanted.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of times, especially in our churches, gentlemen will portray something because they kind of take the vulnerability of a woman that's looking for someone, and they'll go in like, you know,
Boaz.
totally BS. They don't have a relationship with Christ. So I believe what you were saying is not so much a Christian, but a real life relationship. And a lot of times we don't examine what the relationship is with a person with our faith. We just look at, do they have the attributes of a Christian, or do they? What you should be really checking for is, do they really have a relationship?
Come on,
and that takes time. And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, women and men fall prey to certain things because people are able to fake it, and kind of how can I put it? We know we're drawn away in our own lust. We get that.
Yeah.
But sometimes we realize that some things are dangled in front of us as a facade.
Right.
And a lot of us have fell for facades in the Christian realm, and where it's not that person really had a relationship; they just wanted sex.
Come on.
And they knew how to use their non-relationship with Christ to pursue that. So,
Because it's so easy to fake it. It's easy to fake church.
Come
it's
on.
easy to fake a relationship. All you have to do is know a couple songs, know a couple
Scripture.
prayers,
Yeah.
know a scripture.
Shout. Your shout got to be right. Your shout.
Say grace when y'all go out to eat.
The
I
devil
mean-
knew the scriptures.
Huh?
Satan knew the scriptures, so that don't even.
Well, yeah. But if y'all are going out on your first date and he says, wait a second, let's say grace.
It does do something.
That's
You're
gonna
right.
do
No, it
something.
does. No, it does.
That's going to do something. So
Okay.
since it's so easy to fake it, how can you identify authenticity in someone else's relationship?
Let me tell you. Well, I'm going to give the intro, and then let me tell you how my husband. Because I asked him, what made you at 19 say,
I'm gonna marry this woman.
I'm gonna marry this woman?
Yes.
What was it about me that, because my husband
Ooh.
was a player.
Oh.
My husband, I mean,
He said, "Don't say it like that."
was a dog. No, I shouldn't say it that way. No. My husband knew people in biblical ways and unbiblical ways. Was that better? Was that better?
Be
I
nice.
mean, she's talking about the past, though. Like,
no.
It's not the
But I'm
present.
bringing you to a place because at that time I was not a virgin either, and I told you I had those 2 bedrooms,
Come
that
on.
working
And the fireplace.
lied to me.
You had the setup.
And I knew me, and I literally we were both born and raised in church, and church all my life. I was in church. Church wasn't in me all my life, but I was in church all my life. And I had a life experience that happened. And I said, you know what, God? I'm tired of you beating me over my head now. I'm going to behave. I'm going to be good. And so I reclaimed celibacy. And so I would not get into a relationship because I said I'm reclaiming celibacy, and that's going to be my portion. Pray my strength in the Lord. So here comes Kevy Kev.
Smooth Kev. Come on.
And this was the moment, I'll let him tell the story, to your point, Pastor, of from him saying this is what made the difference in how he was at the age of 19 able to say, that's my wife. Now, I didn't know this story until like 3 years, I think, into the marriage. But
So this is going to date us. So you know when you had your mixtape, I say it, everybody.
Yep.
For those that don't know that, you put the tape in, you press play, and when it gets to the end, if you don't have the recorder that flip over, you got to take it out and turn it.
That's it.
To get the side B. So
That's
I had
it.
my Jodeci going, all of that going, and I'm laying down my game. I'm giving her all that I have, and right before we were getting ready to hang up, she said, "Let's pray."
Ooh, she got you.
I said,
Yes.
what?
Right.
She said, "Let's pray." And that was the first time I experienced, and I dated girls in the church too. That was the first time I had experienced someone concerned not only about my natural, but also
my
about
spiritual.
my spiritual.
Yes,
And I knew
yes.
at that moment that was the one that was going to be my wife. I can build with her
Yes.
because she's going to cover me in prayer as I cover her in prayer. So that night we prayed together. At 19, that was new to me. I never had anybody say, let's pray together. And if it was because we wanted to make sure that test came out negative.
For me, my experience is a little different. So, as you said before, the church was always in me, but I wasn't always in the church. And I'm a little scarred from the church. And so, yes, I am a black gay male, right? And so when I think about your question, does this person have to be
A Christian.
a Christian?
Yes.
Once again, I'm just gonna change all your questions tonight.
Come on, change it up. Come
do
on,
you
what you got?
that relationship aspect? Do you have a relationship? What do your values look like? What do your morals look like? For me, are you religious versus spiritual? Do you have a connection to self? Do you have a connection to the world, to people around you, the relationships? I think for me, that's what it's about. People say, "Oh, what do you do?" I say, "I'm a healer. I help people." Oh, that's it? No. What do you do for the world? What do you normally do? Not just for you, for the world. And so that's not a prerequisite for me. You have to have a relationship with self, a relationship with people around you. Maybe you can be more spiritual and have a connection with some higher power. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, so you're actually, that is a negotiable for you. Indeed, indeed. So
It
go
doesn't
ahead.
the Bible even talk about in those situations? Because I really contemplated this question.
Talk to me. Come on.
And I know of a very successful marriage. They were older. They were married like maybe 40, 50 years. The wife was a elder in the church. The husband was Jehovah's Witness.
Right.
And they had a marriage, and they had that foundational conversation, that negotiation, that it worked for them. Again, it's important to also understand what works for me in my relationship may not work for you. So that's why it's not always, I know we see these hashtag power couples and stuff like that, but I kind of just intuitively never went in saying to my husband, we need to be like that couple.
Right.
Because we have a front stage personality and a backstage personality, and it's the human experience. So you just never know what that person is going home with. However, for me, when I was thinking about this, the only non-negotiable would be like if you were just like atheist and you just can't at all, because there's just
There's nothing to negotiate.
There's nothing to negotiate, period.
Indeed.
However, let's say, taking that off the table, the Bible does talk about the unsanctified husband being sanctified, help me, Pastor, by the sanctified wife, and vice versa, right? So there is opportunity, because we have seen, because her testimony, I think 40 years into the marriage, he came to church and gave his life for 40 years. She said part of her negotiation was she kept up her wifely duties. So before she went to church, she made sure he had his meal. And if she was going to go to convention, she cooked the meals for the week and, things like that. So I think it takes wisdom if you are going to be in a relationship. And, everybody has their own negotiables. It takes wisdom to navigate that in a way that Christ would still be pleased, because Christ does tell us that we still have to honor our husbands and our wives. It doesn't say honor the husband or wife that's saved. It just says honor the husband or wife.
Netta, go ahead.
So as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. That's what we're doing in my house. I know that I'm a helpmate, and if I'm going to submit to somebody, I need to submit to somebody that is submitted to Jesus. I don't have the time to act like I'm signed up for the construction crew and wait on you to get holy. I'm not doing that.
You don't got 40
Yeah, I done
years.
did
You
that
don't-
already.
okay.
As a woman who's divorced, I did that. We did that, and I'm good. I want to come in, but we both know who Jesus is, and we know where we're going. I'm not trying to start from scratch, and I'm not trying to figure out if you're going to choose the Lord. Because then what if he don't? You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to, you got to recognize that when you step into a relationship with somebody, can I really handle you as you are for the rest of your life if you choose not to change? So if I'm concerned about my household, I'm going to be concerned about my man's soul. So I need your soul to be right, to be honest, before we can keep moving from there. But I get what you're saying, but
I think it's just like every marriage is different.
Yes, I'm 10 toes down on it. I'm not gonna lie.
Every marriage is different.
And I think I love the perspectives here, because I think that everybody watching, right? That's what we're here to show. This is not supposed to be a conversation about a unified front, we all agreeing and all on the same page. Every last one of us here on this panel are coming from a different place, which brings us into the next segment.
Next to me is where you belong. You're right for me, I can't go wrong. You're the reason I made this song. Patiently, I waited for you. Next to me is where you belong. You're right for me, I can't go wrong. You're the reason I made this song.
All right, we're getting into our game of the evening. So you guys ready for the title? Because I like it. We negotiating or no is the title. So here goes, or no, right? So here goes the rules to the game, right? If I give you a scenario, I'm gonna read not necessarily a scenario, but just a list of like traditional non-negotiables. What is a non-negotiable? You hear this and you were like, no, never, and never ever, right? Once you hear that, you're gonna put your flag up, right? And if you did not put your flag up, that means you're willing to negotiate. You're at a place where you're like, maybe, if you say it right, if you come with the right parameters, I might be able to consider. Now, what I'm gonna ask you to do, if you don't put your flag up, is to explain why you didn't put your flag up. You know, what are the things that kind of comes with that, and what are you willing to negotiate? Are you guys ready to play? Yeah. First thing. Honesty and trust. We negotiating or no?
I'm a firm believer a lot of people like to be lied to, depending on what it is. Lied.
Ooh,
Lied
talk about it.
to.
Come on.
Especially if it's to keep the boat in the ocean, for the most part. Like this gentleman said, you know, sometimes he'll probably back down from an argument just because he wants to go to sleep. He may actually don't agree or disagree with what's going on, but he's going to take that battle. I think that's a form of, you know, massaging honesty for the most part. I think it's subjective. I think it's a base-by-base situation, too. Yes, we will all like to be honest all the time, but I don't think that's actually necessary in day-to-day operations. So, yeah, that's something I'm willing to negotiate.
Come on. All right, now we talking perspectives. Now, everybody was in agreement. Were we in a, come on, Chevis.
I know this is going to sound bad, but
It's not.
the expectation for your partner to never let you down,
Ooh, talk about it. TALK.
like ever,
Mhm.
is absolutely ridiculous. So if they do let you down, they do lie to you, if they disappoint you, even if they kind of betray you, do you throw them away?
Do you throw them away?
I don't know. So at some point, you do have to negotiate that.
Right.
So I'm
Honesty
just
and
saying,
trust.
realistic expectations of people,
Right.
they're not perfect.
I
Totally
love
agree.
it. I love it. Do we have anybody else? Or we
I'm
can
throwing
move
the
on?
baby out with the bathwater. It is
Baby.
no.
Baby
You
and
have
the
to
bath-
be
You
honest.
have to be honest.
I can't. That is for me. That is a non-negotiable. Did I do that right? I put my
You
flag up.
did. You put your flag
No, you
up.
got to be honest.
You put your
and
flag up.
if you're not honest, that means I'm looking at you where like you still don't know yourself.
Ooh.
It's okay to be honest and truthful. Nobody said the truth feels good. Nobody ever said that. Be honest.
To Chevis's point, right? If you're in a relationship and the trust of the relationship says that, hey, I'm for you and you're for me, and that's it, right? And the trust was broken, then are you going to throw the person out with the baby and bath?
No,
is
because
happening?
trust is a thing
and baby.
that can be built back up.
Okay, so hold on.
Totally
So,
disagree.
That's a
so
thing
now,
that can be
is
built
that
back up.
are you negotiating with trust by doing that?
That's
Or
what I was getting ready to say.
Or are you saying that once you have violated said trust, I am no longer going to entertain you as a human being?
So here's my theory. You start off with 100%.
Yes.
I have no reason not to trust you.
Okay.
I have no reason not to believe. You knock yourself down. When you are dishonest, you're a manipulator or whatever, you knock yourself down. Now we got a couple notches. I have no you come in with a clean slate. And so when that slate is broken and when it's messed up, notch, we go down. Now we got to build that thing back up.
So
One of the things that was brought out, and I think when you said throwing the baby out with the water, in a relationship, when I think of non-negotiables, I think that once I break that trust, the relationship is done.
That's how I feel. Yep.
And that's not always the case. Sometimes things will happen and the negotiation then starts over because I betrayed your trust in this particular area, but we're going to work through it.
The expectation is I want to be able to trust you and that you are honest with me, even if it's something I don't want to hear. So don't ever think that, because my husband is all man, so he does not just acquiesce to me just because I got an attitude. My husband has said to me, you'll be all right, but I'm going to sleep. And guess what? I was all right in the morning. So he doesn't just tell me what I want to hear, because he knows that I am one of that demographic of people that hates to be lied to. I would rather you kiss me with a truth that it hurts than smile and lie to my face. That is a non-negotiable. So when I said it's non-negotiable for me because my mind is thinking about the relationship norms. I come in with the expectation that trust and honesty is our norm.
So it's the standard.
Right.
And we're not always
Understood.
going to
Meet that mark.
We're not always going to meet that mark.
Sounds familiar. Go ahead.
But we're always going to aim
Strive
for
for
it.
that. That's it.
And,
Go
and
ahead.
it's the little things. Like a lot of times, and I'll make this really quick, it's the little things. Sometimes we think of the bigger things. But when you start off with dishonest stuff like, and I'm not saying this about my wife, but because she doesn't do this, but when you hide bags that you bought.
She doesn't do that?
Yeah.
Okay,
you
no,
know,
that's not her.
Not
You would
her.
never, you would
When
never
you
talk
buy
about
these
her
shoes,
on a
that she-
show
I wouldn't talk
that's
about
going to
her
be
in front
like
of her. No, I
televised.
wouldn't
You
do
never.
that.
No,
This is my baby. My job is to protect. You know, so when it's those little things, when you think about the little things
Right,
things become
right,
bigger things.
right.
And again, that's dishonesty.
Right.
So when we look at the totality of it,
Right.
it's really hard to say from a perspective of, okay, that's a non-negotiable because
Okay.
every one of us that's a couple or whether we've been dishonest.
That's it.
We've answered questions and he hit it on the head. They might say, do I look good in this? And you really don't like the outfit,
Right.
but you know their feelings are going to be hurt if you say, that is the ugliest dress I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
Absolutely not. I just want to go, you know what? It look you
would
working
never,
it.
Kev.
It looks good for you. So
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do.
exactly. I see what you're trying to do.
yeah.
We cater to what the need is.
So excellent. So here goes. All right. We have 12 traditional non-negotiables. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to hit them lightning rounds. All right, here we go. Next one, number 2 says mutual respect. We negotiating or no? Mutual respect. I don't know what's happening over here. Mutual respect. I don't know. Come on. Oh, okay, thanks. Okay, yeah. All right.
Y'all see that negotiation?
Moving on to the right. Moving on to the next one. Being a great communicator. What we looking at? You negotiating with that or no? If you're not negotiating with that, put your flag up. If you like, maybe. I mean, I could. If you say it right, like, if you use the right words, if your posture is good, if you offer food with it. All right, come on. So whose hand is down? Where we at? Go ahead. Is your flag down? My flag is down. Okay, come on. Come on, Travis. Oh, okay, Andrew.
Communication takes learning.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. It takes understanding. Mm-hmm. You can grow to become a better communicator, a more efficient and effective communicator.
Yep.
But it doesn't always start like that.
Come on.
But you learn by understanding that there's a necessity.
Yes. Yes.
And if you decide to take that time, then it'll benefit your relationship. But it's not always there.
Indeed. Travis?
And I'll just say that therapy helps you be a better communicator in
Come
marriage.
on.
So
Therapy. Come on.
I would say
ahead.
communications evolves over time. The way I communicated with her 30 years ago is not the way I can communicate with her now. So communication is something that has to be worked on, and it evolves. So
Yes.
again, the 19-year-old and the 21-year-old, we don't communicate the same as we did then.
Right. Do we have anybody else with their flag down? Go ahead, flag down. Come on, Netta.
I think in a perfect world,
Yes.
yes, it's negotiable on the idea that this person is going to evolve. This person is going to grow. So that's in the perfect world. In a non-perfect world, you really might be stuck with what you got and they don't communicate. And what are you going to do with that? So it is kind of like, are you okay with the person who's not good at communication? Or are you really hoping that this person is going to grow so that you two can improve?
I can't date your potential.
Y'all not following
Like,
the rules.
I can't, I'm
I
sorry,
agree. I agree.
Chelsea, I can't date your potential.
You can't date the potential.
If I see what you bringing now, I'm not gonna be like privy to say, oh well, in 10 years you're gonna be an excellent communicator. No.
Yes.
I'm not saying a great communicator. Do you communicate?
Do you?
So
Do you communicate? And there's different forms of
Capacity.
communication.
that's what I was going to say.
Like, come on.
Therapist Tony, because and I did have mine down. So no, I did have mine down. I would say
That's the second
and this
time. I
is
just
the
wanna-
only one. No, I did have mine down. The
wanna let
only,
you know
the
this-
only,
that's
and
strike
this gets
two.
to the point of what you were saying. So I think even though you had yours up, I'm gonna cover it. I think because we're vibing. I think that we have to be aware that there's different styles of communication. So maybe that person does not, verbal, maybe they're nonverbals or they're acts of service
Right.
or the other ways that they communicate. So, and again, it gets into our egocentrism of we think that a person has to communicate to us the way that we communicate to Philly came
Come
out.
on.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Should they date your potential?
I see what you did there, Andrew. Don't get Tony. First off, don't get Tony started because Tony is definitely the one. Being a great listener, are you negotiating or no? Are you negotiating with being a great listener? Like, are you? Dang, that's everybody's hand down.
So I think that just like communicating can be a learned skill, I also think that learning how to be not just a listener, because being an active listener.
Come on.
Okay, because being an
Yes.
active listener, as we all know, involves listening for the content, for understanding, and not for forming your rebuttal.
Right.
So I think that, and guess what? Therapists, so we as therapists had to go to school to learn that.
Come on.
The common person on the street does not know the difference. So operate in grace and patience. And just how you can teach your partner to communicate with you, you can also show your partner, by example, how to be an active listener.
I would just add, adding space for growth, right? So in relationships, you do have to allow space for your partner to grow and for you to grow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And when you're single, you ain't got to listen to nobody. You don't have to.
Absolutely.
You don't have to. right?
Absolutely.
When you get into a relationship, you have to.
So,
And so you have to learn something that you haven't had to do before.
so here we go. Being solid financially.
We were 21 and 19. I'm 21 and 19-year-olds solid in finances. Guess what? There are 41 and
Come on.
and 39. 50 and 60 that are not fine.
Come
Again,
on.
these are things that can be learned, can be taught, and also we have to understand how much our learning and our socialization from our family of origin plays into our relationship with money.
That is it.
For a long period of my life, I'm still single, but I did deal with a lot of women who were financially sound. I first want to ask the question, what is financially, stable, you said? What does that actually mean? Is it
Solid
just
financially.
solid? What does that actually mean? Is it just not struggling financially anywhere? Is it just having a job? Is it having the same amount of money as your partner? What does that actually mean? I could
think-
probably explain that a little bit further.
I think my interpretation, and this is just my personal interpretation of solid financially, I think it's really more so about how you let's bring it to the Bible, being a good steward. You can be a good steward with a little or a lot.
So a lot of times, again, the women that I deal with, they tend to make a lot more than me. Sometimes 6 figures, just high 5 figures or whatever. There's nothing I can technically do for them financially, but I do bring something to them that they can have, whether it's conversation, whether it's advice, whether it's just a person to lean on. I'll change the brakes on your car or something like that. I find value in things that you don't necessarily have. So it kind of mitigates the financial aspect. Granted, we're two individual people, I had my finances, she had hers before we came together. So technically speaking, finances is not necessarily a huge deal, at least with the women I deal with.
Next one is having a job.
Bible says
Ooh.
the man that don't work, don't eat.
You said that's what the word said. You said drop mic, go to the next question. That's what you said. You said the man that do not work. Okay, you're right. The next one says having drive or ambition. We negotiating or no?
I don't even know. Like, honestly, I was sitting here thinking, like, is that non-negotiable? I think that a woman, if they don't see that ambition in a man, he can't cover you. He can't cover you. If a man is not ambitious and he's not a go-getter, how can he provide and cover you? Whereas my wife might have goals and be ambitious, but her job isn't to cover me. It's my job to cover her. So I have to be ambitious. I have to be a go-getter.
I believe that it's negotiable due to the fact that you may be at a particular place in your life. You know what I mean? You're not always going to be the gung-ho, the most ambitious in every point of your life. I know for me, for the most part, I have that ambition.
He and I have lived through layoffs, lived through economic success, economic depression, lived in lands of plenty, lands of famine. You know, our black men face so much when they leave out the door. Like, we do too. You know, when I was thinking of a time where, like, many years ago where my husband got laid off, I, you know, and he was feeling depressed about this, that wasn't the time for me to, like, dig into him. That was the time for me to honestly bear the weight of that 90%. That had nothing to do with finances, but that had to do with drive and ambition, and speak life, speak drive, speak ambition into him, because none of us are perfect.
That's it. Excellent. All right, so here goes. We have a couple more. Having the ability to traveling. No, okay, all right. Not having kids. Is it negotiable or not? Like, we having kids. We're going to go to the next one. Being supportive. I feel like we should talk about that because that sounds important. Being supportive. You put it up. That's not, we not negotiating being supportive. Okay. You're going to negotiate on being supportive. K-Sid, is that what you're saying? I didn't mean to say it like that.
I personally hate, it's this thing called blind support.
Blind support. Talk to me.
I don't like it. I rather you. I'm one of the people that like to be told the truth. You know, I said people like to be lied to. I know, right? I would love to be told the truth. So, okay, perfect example. I'm a photographer, right? And I may not post or take the best photos all the time, but I don't want you liking my stuff on Instagram all the time, just blindly supporting. Tell me if you really like it. Give me some constructive criticism. So, that being said, I think that's what I really mean, you know. I don't necessarily need blind support. I would like for my partner to support me, but only if it's genuine. Don't do it because it's your job.
So
I don't want anything to do it.
Support.
But constructive criticism, I think, is support because they're
they're
trying to make you better.
Right, for sure. I'm all for that. I just don't want it blindly like, oh, that's my babe. He's amazing. He's great. He can't fail at anything. No, I don't need that. That's going to be that's stifling to my creative process.
And I hear you.
Right.
And you don't want the one who's going to say, oh, that's my babe, that's great. But when she's talking to somebody else, you want her to say, oh, that's my babe, he's great.
Emotional availability. What is that? Emotional being. Sheva said, I don't even really need that. Like, I need bills paid. Like, what is you doing? Like, or no. That's how you feeling? How do you feel about that? Is your flag up? Is it down? You're not sure. It's in the middle. Okay. Okay, you're thinking. Do we have any? No. Oh, you're up. Okay, you saying you're not negotiating on that. You need them to come with emotional availability.
You think about the world that we live in. It is not a safe place. And I really need to come home and it be a safe place. Right. So I do need that availability. And like you said already, like all of these questions from the outside, from the the roses, the rosy glasses and all of that, yes, they are non-negotiable. All of these things have to be there. What's negotiable is what it looks like. So, no, I do need emotional availability. It may look different for somebody, but I know that this world is not nice, and I need to be able to come home and boo-hoo for some, about 10, 20 minutes when out there I look like a gangster. I need to come home and be a whole princess. I need that availability.
Yep. Excellent. You guys did an excellent job. Give yourselves a round of applause for our first game. And we are going to swing it back to DJ Accomplished. We're going to give it up one time for DJ Accomplished. Thank you so much for bringing us those tunes once again. Recognizing red flags and green flags in a relationship can help you navigate potential pitfalls and identify healthy dynamics. Before we start the next game, let's just ask a couple of questions. What do you think the importance of honoring both red and green flags are when dating?
I don't think in terms of flags, right? I think in terms of when people use the term red flags, they're thinking of the red light,
right?
Which means stop.
Stop. Yeah.
And I think that it should probably be a caution flag, if anything, saying this is something that I think I should be cautious about if I'm planning on moving forward with this person.
Indeed, indeed. Indeed. All right, well, listen, that brings us right into the next game. So this next game is called Red Flag, Green Flag. I'm going to tell you real quick how it's played. Now, we have several scenarios that we're going to be giving. In each scenario, what we're going to say from our eligible bachelors, bachelor number 1, we have Jules. Raise your flag, Jules. Hey. Bachelor number 2, we have Derek. Derek, raise your flag. How you doing? Bachelor number 3, we have K-Sid. K-Sid in the house. Now, Jules, Derek, and K-Sid are all going to be playing this game for an amazing date with one of our panelists, Netta Shaw. All right? Now, they are going to be going on an all-expense-paid date. When we say the scenario, you're just simply going to put up your flag. Now, we're going to hear from our gentlemen suitors first. And then once we hear from them, and all you're going to do is put up a red flag if you think that scenario is a red flag, and a green flag if you think that's a go, right? If your flag matches our bachelorette's flag, you get to advance. Scenario number 1. You're on your first date, and the waiter brings you out your burger, and it had onions on it. You immediately see that your date insults the waiter and proceeds to go off on them. Is that a red flag or a green flag? And excellent. Looks like all 3 gentlemen suitors will be moving up. Please advance. Panelists, let's hear from you guys. What flags are you putting up? Red flag, red and green flag. Is there something that you would like to elaborate on, Candy?
Your ankle could be a temptation.
No, he was very explicit
You
about
know,
trying to keep it
oh,
PG.
okay. Well, never
So,
mind.
But I knew because at that time it wasn't like we were in an exclusive situation.
This is you just started talking. Y'all just started talking, and they just coming out with it. Fertile Myrtle pull-out game is gotta be. It don't even matter if it's strong or weak. It sounds like she's just gonna procreate. Okay, she knew her purpose. I'm done.